What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Life Coach Zach podcast. Today, I have a very special guest with me, Walli Miller, writer for Clever Girl Finance. She's a financial coach, teaching you how to reach financial freedom, and also the founder of financiallythriving.com. Walli, how you doing today?
Hi, Zach. I'm super excited to be here. I'm good. How about you?
Awesome. I'm doing really well. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to hop on the podcast today. Really looking forward to talking to you a lot about financial freedom, personal finance, money management, all the stuff that you are an expert on. So I know that you have a pretty interesting journey to financial freedom. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely would not say that I always had my money situation right. I started off, born and raised in New York City, specifically the Bronx. So it's one of the poorest boroughs of the city. So I wouldn't say I grew up in poverty, but we were a low income family. We didn't really have a lot of the things that we wanted, but we had food on the table, roof over our head, and occasionally the lights would get turned off or the cable would get turned off if we ever had cable, right? So fast forward a little bit, and I ended up getting one of my I got a dream job. And not only did I get a job that I found incredibly fulfilling, but it was also a well-paying job. And so in my early 20s, I was making more money than my parents had ever made. And in my late 20s, I was making six figures. So you would think, wow, she did pretty well for herself. But there's a couple things that I didn't really know. In my mind, I thought I was good with money because I paid all my bills on time. And I tried to stay out of credit card debt. The problem was that once my bills were paid, all my responsibilities were fulfilled, I had no idea what to do with the money that was left over. So you know what I did? I spent it. And I became a pretty impulsive shopper and sort of like a mindless spender, really. I don't know if anybody could relate to that, but that was definitely my story.
Yeah, absolutely. So what did you do from there? After, you were spending all your discretionary income and being very impulsive when you were shopping, what were the next steps that you took towards financial freedom?
Yeah. So one of the aha moments that I had was, I don't know if it's triggered by a certain dollar amount that you make, or maybe it's after a certain amount of years working. But when I was in my late 20s, I received a letter from the Social Security Administration, and it was my earnings report. And it had all of the money that I had ever made, starting back from when I was 14 or 15 years old, working summer camp jobs, right? And when I added up the total amount of money that I had made in my lifetime, I was really surprised at the amount and realized that I didn't have a whole lot to show for it. And that was sort of an awakening moment. It was just like, wow, like what in the world has happened to this money? And I had a closet full of clothes and shoes, and I had handbags, and I had done some trips and all of that. But really, my money didn't reflect, or what I owned didn't reflect what I valued most. And it wasn't aligned with what I was valuing most. And that was sort of a wake-up call there. Now, I want to say that made me change my entire way of thinking. It made me stop and pause, but I kind of continued down that path, unfortunately, for a few more years. And I mentioned that I had a really good job, a really fulfilling job, until management changed. And one of my favorite bosses left, and we had new leadership. And when that happened, my dream job became kind of a nightmare. And then it was at that point that I realized, oh my goodness, I am essentially living paycheck to paycheck, even though I'm making six figures. Maybe I wouldn't lose everything after losing one paycheck, but if I didn't have two paychecks in a row, I was going to be in trouble. And so it was at that point that I needed to decide, what do I need to do differently? What am I missing? How am I making this amount of money? And I don't have anything to show for it. And that was what changed my life.
Interesting. I forgot who said it, but it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep. Right. And financial freedom also is very subjective. A lot of people think financial freedom is having millions of dollars in the bank, or maybe it's even having enough passive income to cover your monthly overhead expenses. But the psychology of money is also very important. When it comes to the basic steps of personal finance and money management, it's paying your bills on time, making more money than you spend, having 4 to 6 months of your bills in the savings account, investing 10 to 15% of your income in a retirement account. And if you're doing on keeping your housing expenses under 35% of your overall monthly income, if you're hitting all those, right, you're doing the right things. But financial freedom is a very subjective term. So as someone who teaches others how to become financially free, what's your definition of financial freedom?
I love this question. On a recent podcast episode that you had, one of the things that you said was that you don't have financial goals. You have lifestyle goals. And I love that because I think so many times when we think about personal finances and money management, we think about math, calculations, Excel spreadsheets, budget apps. But really what you want to do is to make sure that you are living a fulfilled life today, but without forfeiting what you are going to need in the future. And this point that you just bring up, that the definition even of wealth is going to be different for every person, right? It's not just about the bank balances that you have. It's about the richness of your friendships and your relationships that you have.
Absolutely.
Physical wellness, like all of these things are incredibly important. And so we can't just focus on the money. But I love this idea of, and this is what I teach my clients, it's that, yes, knowing your numbers is really important, right? We really need to know how much money are we bringing in and how much money is going out. But that is not the only focus, right? We need to really make sure that we have good relationship with money. And, this is kind of a woo-woo word, but like money mindset. And when we think about money mindset, it's just your habits, your behaviors, your relationship with money. And what we don't realize is that so much of that is formed from when we're really young. And there are things that we learn directly from our parents about money. And sometimes there's things that we learn indirectly that shape our relationship with money.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said again. And when it comes to money, I want to say, I want to give a personal story, because as of right now, especially with the real estate market as the way it is, this is the most I've ever been worth on paper right now. My investments are up, my house is up, I whatever. I'm not going to go into too much of my personal money, but at the end of the day, even though this is the most amount of money I've ever had or the most amount of money I've ever been worth, for some reason, when I compare myself to other people, I feel Baroque and this is not coming off. I hope no one gets offended by what I'm saying, but the psychology of money and gratitude and understanding that peace of mind, and if your basic needs are met, from there, happiness is a choice, right? Because the highest paid baseball player in the major leagues, Mike Trout, makes, well over, I think he makes over $50 million a year. But if you compare Mike Trout to the top 20 hedge fund managers that all made $140 million a year, right? Mike Trout feels broke. And then the $140 million hedge fund managers that made that much money that year compare themselves to the top 3 hedge fund managers. And those people make $500 million a year. And then those people are like, wow, we're broke. How do we make $700 million a year? And then, but listen, guys, Warren Buffett said it best. No one wants to get rich slow. Okay. Warren Buffett made 95% of his net worth after the age of 80 years old, right? It's compound interest. But it starts with your habits. It starts what you're doing today to be safer and secure financially tomorrow. And it's not just black and white, and there's not one formula, but here's the question for you. What are some steps that people can take right now if they're making more money than they spend, they don't have any credit card debt, they have 3 to 6 months of bills in the bank, they're investing 10 to 15% of their income in a tax-deferred retirement account? What's the next step from there?
Well, first of all, if you have just checked off every single one of the things that Zach just mentioned, kudos to you, because you need to realize that you are way far above and beyond most people, particularly in the United States, right? So, I mean, what you've said of like spending less than you make, this just seems like such a simple concept, but somewhere along the line, we lose that. And so, yes, 100%. The really, when we talk about financial independence, or some people will say financial freedom, some will use that term interchangeably. It's two simple things. Number one, spend less than you make. And number two, decrease your expenses. Once you've been able to do those two things, you're going to have money left over. And here is the key factor that I was missing. Was I was spending less than I made. I found ways to increase my income, right? But I didn't know how to grow my money. And when we're talking about investments, there's various ways to do it, but really it's going to be the stock market, it's going to be real estate, it's going to be entrepreneurship or business ownership, right? And when we're talking about the stock market, I'm going to include things like cryptocurrency and all of those other things. Real estate, it could be, it could be commercial property, it could be residences, it could be mobile home parks, whatever it is, right? But those three things, those three investment fields, you need to understand the type of investor that you want to be. Zach, I call myself a lazy investor. Okay. I don't want to be looking at stock charts every day. I don't want to be day trading. And what you've said about investing the 10 to 15%, look, if you are able to do that, way to go. Most people cannot. But if you can invest above and beyond that, that is going to shorten the amount of time that you have to work. And this is one of the key focuses that the key things that I focus on, which is this work optional. Zach, have you heard of the FIRE movement?
I have not. Tell me about it.
Okay. So the FIRE movement is essentially a group of people who are choosing to be work optional. And FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And remember I mentioned that I was going through this phase in my job where I realized, holy smokes, I'm essentially living paycheck to paycheck. And I went to the land of Google to figure out what was I doing wrong, because I was not in credit card debt. I really was debt free. I had some student loans, but it was relatively low. And so I'm like, what am I missing? And I was missing the wealth building aspect. And even that term wealth wasn't part of my daily vocabulary. We never talked about wealth in my household growing up. I didn't know what it meant to me to be wealthy. And I equated wealth with being rich, right? I wasn't an artist. I wasn't a singer, an actor, an athlete. So in my mind, I was never going to be rich. I was never going to have the Lamborghinis and the 12 mansions. But what I needed to do was define what wealth meant to me. And to me, it meant more than just being financially stable, right? Stability is important because there's so many people in this country who can't even get that financial stability. But beyond that financial stability is thriving. It's really financially thriving and being able to have the security, the stability, the charitableness, also that wealth building component. That isn't just wealth building for me, right? Like, what good does it do if I'm a millionaire, right? And my family is suffering. It's also about building that generational wealth. And what can I do today? What are some of the things that I could implement today that is going to build and change an entire family legacy? And that was what I was missing. I didn't know what investing really was. To me, it was gambling. I was like, you're gambling, right? You put money in the stock market, it could disappear. What's the difference than going to Atlantic City or Vegas? And it was really understanding the type of investor that I wanted to be, and also that it didn't have to be complicated. And I think that is the piece that so many people shy away from, is that investing component.
Amazing. I love the two things that you spoke about: work optional and what type of investor do you want to be. I want to hit on what type of investor you want to be first, because the work optional is going to be something I really want to talk about. When it comes to what type of investor do you want to be, not everyone has time to look at charts. Not everyone knows what the next, Netflix stock is going to be, what the next Tesla stock is going to be, how you get 100 extra money. But at the end of the day, you have to keep some of your money invested. Your money has to work for you, because especially now with hyperinflation and the way the economy is trending, guys, I hate to break it to you. I am not an economic analyst. My major was economics, but in my opinion, we are definitely heading into a recession. We're heading into a recession. If there's a time to save your money and spend less, it is right now, guys. I don't want to scare anyone, but at the end of the day, with gas prices the way they are, rent prices are through the roof. Let me tell you something, guys. Rent is not going down. Your rent prices are not going down. Food costs are going up. Everything is going up. So when it comes to investing, you got to keep up with inflation. How do you do that? You can just invest in the S&P 500. Just invest in the S&P 500. The average return on the S&P 500, I don't know what it is. It's at least 6.5%, right? You'll get at least higher. It's higher, right? Especially since 2016, right? The market, in 2018, the market was up over 20%. Right? So at the end of the day, you got to make sure you're investing your money. If you are at a job that has a 401k plan and they match whatever you contribute, you have to max that out, because they're giving you free money invested over time, over the next 30, 40 years until you meet retirement age. It's going to compound. It's going to be 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 times whatever you put in there today. So guys, and this is something I talk to my followers a lot about, and I encourage this a lot, because personal finance and money management is something that I am pretty good at. I have a pretty good grasp on what you should do. And more importantly, I'm very aware of my habits, hyper aware of my money habits. I go sometimes 7, 8, 9 days without spending $1. Like literally my coffee is 30 cents because I buy K-Cups at Costco. I shop at Trader Joe's, but back to work optional. I love what you talk about when it comes to work optional, that, hey, there's going to be come a time when, I maybe not want to work, but also there's people like me, when it comes to work optional, I'm going to want to work until the day I die, right? I love what I do. I love coaching clients. I love selling real estate. I love wheeling and dealing. I feel a sense of purpose and accomplishment and fulfillment when I'm working, when I'm putting deals together and stuff. So that is something that I was kind of thinking, but sorry, I went on a rant a little bit, but
no, this brings up all of these points, right? I am like you. When I first heard about the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early, I was like, yes. But my idea of retirement wasn't necessarily to go sit on a beach with a little umbrella drink, right? That wasn't for me. But what I wanted to do was have the option to do what I wanted, when I wanted, to take the clients that I wanted without consideration of what the financial return on that would be. And that to me is true financial freedom. That to me is financial independence. When we talk about financial independence, it's a financial philosophy or framework that helps you build a nest egg so that your passive investments will generate that income for you to cover your living expenses. And so when we go back, I think particularly for women, a lot of the financial advice out there is cut coupons, stop spending money on shopping, right? Yes, where you spend your money, being an intentional shopper, being mindful about how you spend your money is incredibly important. But what we need to remember is that this other aspect of making sure that your money is growing for you. And when I first started learning about investing, you mentioned it, the S&P 500. So many times we hear Dow Jones is up, NASDAQ is up, S&P 500, and we have no idea what that is. And it's simply an index of the top 500 companies in the United States. So when people come to me and they're like, I want to start investing, they're thinking, what company should I buy? Which company is going to 3x, 10x, 100x my money? And in my mind, I'm like, look, if I knew that, if anybody knew that, we would be in a different place, right? But instead of trying to figure out what's going to be the next hot tip, right? And sometimes people guess and get it right. There's some material that you can look look at and get an educate, sort of make some educated guesses, but really we don't know, right? We don't know for sure. And so when we're talking about investing, instead of saying, I'm going to pick 2, 3, 4 companies, why not just own the whole top 500 companies and invest in something like an S&P 500 index, right? This is the most simplest way. And then the other thing is, when people ask me, what is the first thing that I can do to begin investing? You mentioned it, Zach. Do you have a 401k? People do not realize that putting money aside in a 401k is investing. Perhaps you are an entrepreneur, or you don't have access to a 401k, right? There's something called the thrift savings plan if you're in the military or a government employee, or a 403b. But if you don't have access to workplace retirement accounts, there's something called the Roth IRA, or even a traditional IRA. And each of them have its own differences, and knowing what those are. And that is the place where to begin. One should begin investing. Forget about trying to figure out the next best stock and trying to look at charts. Keep it simple.
Well said. You are investing if you're contributing to your 401k.
Yes.
You're investing if you're putting 10 to 15% in a tax-deferred Roth or traditional IRA. Don't worry about picking the next amazing stock that's going to 10x. And that was actually something, I'm glad you brought that up, that I wanted to touch on, is everyone's trying to hit grand slams. Everyone's trying to hit home runs, right? They want to know what's the best altcoin or low market cap cryptocurrency like Dogecoin that's going to be up 10,000%, right? We see these, or at least I do, because I follow a lot of financial literacy type stuff and success and motivational stuff on Instagram. It's like, if you were to invest your stimulus check in Shiba Inu coin, then you would have $5.5 billion. And that just gives us a false sense of reality, right? If you want to try to hit a home run, you want to swing for the fences, do not be upset when you strike out and you lose all your money, right? Like, just like I said again, Warren Buffett says no one wants to get rich slow. Everyone wants to hit that home run and hit that grand slam and pick the next Dogecoin and put all their money in it. But at the end of the day, that's not realistic, guys. And I got a message for all the people that are FOMOing in, fear of missing out. They're FOMOing in to all these cryptocurrencies, right? I got a message for you guys. If you're FOMOing in to any of these altcoins, right? Because I invest in cryptocurrency. Most of my crypto is in Bitcoin, right? And I'll be honest, I'm not up that much. I got into the game late. I bought in February, right? So I had a lot of time to buy. I'm up now, clearly. Bitcoin's at 62,000, whatever. But if you're trying to hit a home run and you're putting all your money in these shit coins, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. And if I'm wrong, I'll admit I'm wrong when I see all these altcoins go crazy. But the market cap of crypto right now is 2.5, almost $3 trillion, okay? That's already 30-40% of gold. Gold's market cap is like 11 trillion, something like that. And the whole cryptocurrency space, $27 billion is invested in Shiba Inu coin. Come on, you guys. The owners and the people who are holding all those coins are going to pull the rug on you. And whoever holds the bag last loses. So that is my advice to all these people that are FOMOing into the cryptocurrencies. But you said it well, guy. You said it so well, Wally. It's just make sure you're investing.
Yeah, I mean, there's this whole hype investing thing, right? And I will say that we are in a time right now where getting into the market is easier than ever before. I love the accessibility. And also before, if you wanted to make one trade, you would pay commissions. You're paying $7, $8, $10 per trade just to buy a stock. And now most of those commission fees are gone. But the problem is that if you are investing in something that you do not understand, you can lose your shirt. And I just want to go back to something that you said about investing 10 to 15%. That is great. Like I said, most people can't even do that. If you are doing that, good. But when we're talking about really investing for financial independence, right? Investing so that you have that work optional lifestyle, so that if you wanted to work just 6 months out of the year, or if you wanted to take a sabbatical to maybe raise some kids, or if you wanted to, whatever the case might be, right? Maybe take a lower paying job or build a business and not have to worry about, taking care of your basic living expenses, doing 10 to 15% is getting rich slowly, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But I want to speed that up a little bit. And imagine, if you invest 15%, if your savings rate is 15%, you need to probably work for 40 years before you can have a healthy retirement. And I want to say that retirement isn't the age of 65. It's essentially, when do you have enough money that will cover all of your living expenses? And so saving 15%, it's great, but you're going to have to work for 40 years, right? This is the kind of the gig that has been given to us. But I want to revolt against that. And I am revolting against that. I'm like, okay, what happens if I up that to 25% of investing, right? If instead of living off as 100% of my income, right? So I'm spending every dollar that I make. What happens if I save 15%? What happens if I save 50% of my income? And that might sound really absurd, but that goes back to the other point, right? So you want to reduce your expenses and increase your income. Figure out ways to increase that income so that the more money that you make, rather than increasing the more money you spend, which tends to happen to all of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most of us are probably making more money today than we were 5 years ago, yet we're still in that financial struggle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, if you save 50% of your income, you literally cut the amount of years you have to work in half, right? So saving 15% of your income, investing 15% of your income, you're going to be working for 43 years. You save and invest 50% of your income and it slashes it down to 17, right? And just thinking about how that math works was what was eye-opening to me. Today, me and my husband, we decided to take a huge we really made a U-turn, right? And shifted our perspective on how we spent money, on how we made money, and how we invested. And we started our financial wellness journey back in 2015, 2016 with just a few thousands of dollars in our 401k. Today, we have a $1 million stock portfolio, not net worth. We also have real estate, but not real estate, a $1 million portfolio. How? Simply by focusing in on getting, on investing on those workplace retirement accounts and on things like an index fund. I didn't have to know what were the top companies. A very small portion of my portfolio is in cryptocurrency, but the majority of the wealth is in safe. And of course, there's risk to any type of investments you make, right? But on relatively safe investment decisions. And most people would say that is getting rich slowly. But I'm like, I built a $1 million portfolio simply by investing in index funds.
Amazing. Amazing. Walli, first of all, congratulations on your success. And thank you so much for sharing all the wisdom and sharing all the knowledge that has worked for you. And it's clear that when you apply these principles to your life, whether it's in financial life, health-wise, mental health-wise, habits, in any area of your life, you apply these principles that all these wise people are teaching, they're going to work. So Walli, thank you so much. To all the people that are listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, head over to financiallythriving.com to connect with Walli and learn all about how you could get on your way to being financially free. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much for watching up until this point. I'm going to drop Walli's contact below, her Instagram, her website, all those URLs that you can click to easily access all her amazing stuff. Walli, thank you so much again for your time today, and I look forward to connecting again in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been awesome, Zach.
Talk soon.